My boyfriend and I have been together for about 18 months, but we were best friends before that and have known each other since we were about 16 or 17. We're a perfect match, and I have zero doubts about him. About a year or so ago, he reconnected with a girl he used to go to school with when they bumped into each other at the gym. They weren't exactly friends, but knew of each other and were friendly. The girl, I'm going to call her Tia, is a singer in a band and had recently lost her guitarist. My boyfriend happens to be a guitarist himself, and a really good one at that. So it made sense. He went to a practice, met the other bandmates, and things have gone great. The band has played several paid gigs in the year since, each one bigger than the last, including a fairly big festival last week. I was so excited for this opportunity for my boyfriend, and he seemed so happy with it. So naturally I wanted to meet the band, especially the lead singer, as she's the only woman in the band, so I thought it would be easiest to bond with her. At first, things were great. We talked very easily, and other than being a bit gushy about my boyfriend and me, I just know you two are going to get married, etc. Everything was fine. I went to a few practices to watch, and we started going to the pub as a group sometimes. It was always fun, until a few weeks later when a few odd things started to crop up. The major one for me was that Tia made a big deal out of my boyfriend being in the band, more so than the other members who have been there longer. For example, she declared on stage once that she and my boyfriend are soulmates. She did add platonically and creatively afterwards, but it felt insulting to me. She'd thank him much more than other members of the band and spent more time talking to him than anyone else. I put it down to her being in a tough spot after she lost her first guitarist and being grateful that my boyfriend very luckily reappeared in her life to take the old guitarist's place. She describes it as the stars aligned. She started pulling me aside when we went out together to thank me for letting my boyfriend be in the band and saying stuff like, "I'm sure it's really hard for you with him hanging out with me all the time for practice. It's like I see him more than you do. We're just friends, honestly. But I know you must be worried, but don't be. I'd never do that." Which I guess is fine, if a little disrespectful. But she said it so many times over the course of about 3 weeks that eventually I decided to be honest. I told her I was a little worried at first, but I'm so glad my boyfriend is in the band. It makes him happy, which makes me happy, and I trust him fully. No worries here. She never mentioned anything about their time together after that. Things carried on like normal, to the point where I considered us proper friends. We hung out. I'm an artist, so I designed all their band posters, and she even turned up at our flat for a chat after an ugly breakup she had. Things were fine. As I mentioned before, the band played a semi-big festival last week. The band members got free tickets, including a +1, so naturally my boyfriend and I went together. Before they played their gig, I noticed that Tia ignored me completely. Like, she turned her back on me to speak to other people. I figured she was nervous about the gig. The last 2 times we've hung out before the festival, she had done the same thing too, but she's very passionate about her music and quite highly strung. So again, I put it down to nerves. After they played their set at the festival, however, which was amazing by the way, she continued to blatantly ignore me. My partner and I were so confused. He tried so hard to include me in conversations, but Tia would go out of her way to ignore me. Even the other bandmates, who were lovely to me whenever Tia wasn't there, barely looked at me the whole time as long as Tia was there. Eventually, my partner and I broke off from the group and enjoyed the festival on our own before deciding to leave and go home 2 days early. Nobody asked why, and Tia didn't say goodbye. It was horrid, like being back at school again. I felt like the weird kid, and I couldn't figure out why the cool girls didn't like me. I cried in secret in a portable toilet. Not ideal. My boyfriend and I have no idea what the issue is, besides the obvious. Tia fancies him. On paper that makes sense, but she's had strings of flings since my partner joined the band, and despite how naive it makes me sound, I know it simply wouldn't happen. My boyfriend and I are rock solid. He told me if that's the case, he'll leave the band, but that seems extreme. After coming home from the festival, I sent Tia this message. "Hi, Just wanted to say congratulations again for this weekend. You were all amazing. And also check in. Have I done something that's upset you? I know you were busy prepping for the gig, but it felt a bit like you didn't want me there. And you've been quite distant the last few times we've met up too. She read it and hasn't responded. My partner has a band practice session with her in 2 days, and I'm worried it's going to be awkward for him, though he seems unfazed by that and more upset that Tia hurt my feelings. Being in the band is really important to him, and I'm worried I've inadvertently jeopardized this for him. What do I do here? Is there anything more I can or should do to deal with or get to the bottom of this? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. OP, it sounds to me like she is clearly into him, but the point is, the reason for her behavior doesn't matter as much as what to do with it. First of all, internalize the idea that you can't be friends with everyone on this planet. Yes, it would be nice to befriend the band, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. She doesn't want to talk to you? Fine. You made a step towards her, very classy, I should say, and she made 2 steps back. Let her be. Friendship is something that should be wanted from both sides. Come to the events and support your boyfriend, but don't try to be with people who don't want to be with you. Maybe bring friends along if you are afraid you will be awkwardly standing alone. As for your boyfriend, he should understand that with her, he has a primarily working relationship at this point, and he should treat it as such. Be nice, polite, and respectful, but not best friends for life or overly friendly. I don't think he should confront her or try to fix your relationship with her. It would only escalate the situation unnecessarily. Comment 2. It's pretty obvious she's jealous of you. Her having flings is to try and make your boyfriend jealous to make him date her. Now she's realized it won't work, and she's showing her true colors and what she really thinks of you. She no longer needs to pretend. You need to ignore her. Stop trying to be friends. She doesn't want that. I just block her number and get on with my life. Her hang-ups are none of your business. Don't go on about her to your boyfriend. He won't be interested in you complaining about how she doesn't want to be friends. As far as he's concerned, he's told you he's not interested in her, so that's the end of it. Now, for the update. My boyfriend has a band, and the lead singer has been acting super weird around him, but after she invited a surprise guest to a getaway, I know why. A couple days after the festival, my boyfriend had a band practice scheduled with Tia at a local recording studio. I decided to drop him off to see if Tia's behavior had changed. As he walked into the studio, I overheard Tia laughing loudly inside. I don't know why, but I felt super anxious. After about an hour, my boyfriend texted me to pick him up, saying practice was over. When he got into the car, he seemed unusually upbeat, which made me feel even more uneasy. I asked about the practice, and he mentioned how Tia complimented his guitar skills. He casually mentioned that the band was planning a weekend trip for a gig, and Tia suggested they all stay at her friend's beach house. A few days later, my boyfriend received a call from Tia about the trip, and I overheard them giggling. It was like he was completely oblivious to how weird this was, talking about how fun it would be. The night before the trip, I received a text from Tia asking if she could bring a surprise guest along. I asked my boyfriend who the surprise guest was, but he just shrugged it off like it was nothing to worry about. I decided to confront Tia directly and sent her a message asking for clarity about the guest. She responded with this vague message saying it was just someone from the band. At the beach house, I arrived early to set up and saw Tia talking excitedly with a guy I didn't recognize. My boyfriend arrived shortly after, and Tia introduced the guy as her old friend. During dinner, Tia kept leaning into my boyfriend's personal space, making inside jokes that completely excluded me. I tried to join the convo, but she just kept redirecting the attention to him. That night, I overheard Tia whispering to my boyfriend about old times while I was in the next room. He looked confused but sided with me, telling Tia to respect our relationship. She stormed off upset, and the atmosphere became really uncomfortable. The next morning, my boyfriend got a text from Tia saying she was quitting the band, citing personal reasons. He seemed upset and didn't understand why she would quit. A few days later, I found out that the surprise guest was actually Tia's ex-boyfriend, who was at the beach house. My boyfriend expressed disbelief but decided to reach out to Tia for clarity. She responded with a vague message, leaving him frustrated. He then decided to focus on a new project without Tia, finally seeing her true colors. I'm honestly feeling a bit mixed about the whole situation. Like, I'm glad my boyfriend is finally seeing Tia for who she is and that he respects our relationship. But man, the whole thing with the ex and her sneaky behaviors just felt like a huge violation of trust. I was so anxious the whole time, and even though I confronted her, I still felt kinda uncomfortable being around her and this random guy, you know? I'm just relieved it's over, but I'm worried about the stress this might put on my boyfriend and his band. We'll see how things go moving forward, I guess. Again, thank you to everyone who gave helpful advice. I'm not sure if I will be updating further, however. Edit. After the beach house incident, Tia sent a message to the entire band about her decision to leave, saying it was due to personal issues. My boyfriend found this confusing since she didn't explain anything. He reached out to another band member who was aware of Tia's ex's presence at the house. They discussed the situation, and it became clear that many in the band suspected Tia's motives for inviting her ex. My boyfriend is now focused on a new project with a different lead singer. Am I the idiot for leaving my husband after he chose sleep over our family? I need to know if I'm crazy for being upset over this and how to even address it after multiple conversations. Background. I am 34 years old and my husband is also 34 years old. We have been together for 13 years, married for 9 years, and have 3 kids aged 4, 3, and 10 months. We own our own company and both work from home. The kids are also at home 24/7 unless spending the occasional night at a grandparent's home. I work mostly during their naps or when all kids are in bed, which is early in the morning or late in the evening, so that I can be present with them when they are up, with the exception of a random email. The problem, since having the baby, my husband has been sleeping in. This didn't bother me at first, as he would wake up and feed the baby in the middle of the night while I pumped occasionally. But that stage of life has been over for roughly 3 months now. At first, the sleeping in was just an hour past when our older kids would wake up, roughly around 7 or 7:30. For the last 2 to 3 months, he has slept in until 10 or 11 a.m. most days, sometimes later. I have lived 20 lives since then. I've done 2 bottles, 3 breakfasts, made coffee, reheated that coffee, cleaned up breakfast, done a load of dishes, started laundry, put the baby down for a nap, gotten my kids ready for the day, likely split up a fight or two between my kids, done a craft, and worked a bit. At least that's what I've done this morning. It is 9:20 a.m. here, and the big kids were up at 6:30 this morning, which is way too early in my opinion. His alarm is set for 7:30 a.m., but he presses snooze until whenever he wakes up. Every time that alarm goes off, I get a little more upset. When he wakes up, he stresses out because he slept in too long and still has lots of work to get done. So he immediately goes into the office and is limited on what he can help with or share in until he's done around 4 or 5 p.m. I have tried waking him up. He goes back to sleep 85% of the time, and honestly, that makes me more frustrated. I've had multiple conversations sharing how it makes me feel, taken advantage of, that his time sleeping is more valuable to him than my time, and that this doesn't feel like an equal partnership. I've questioned if he is experiencing depression, and he says he's not. If I bring up possibly starting to work out of the house again, he flips out. Basically, it feels like it is all on me all the time. Sure, he takes out the trash, picks up after himself and the kids in the evenings when we reset for the next day. He mows and does yard work, which I appreciate because I hate it. But the day-to-day, the mundane things, everything involving our children feels like it falls on me. That's not what this setup was supposed to provide. We did this so we could share the tasks and the parenting, and I am so alone in it all. I wouldn't mind this if I was a stay-at-home mom only. I feel like that would be my job, but we have equal work with our company and somehow everything else has become my sole responsibility as well. At this point, is this blatant disrespect for me and my time? Or am I just being dramatic? Can anyone help or relate? I'm at my wit's end. I hate discussing things when I'm angry, and it doesn't feel like what I say matters much anyway. The calm and rational me is sitting on the couch with the baby, while the me in my head is ripping open our curtains and yelling, "Get up!" Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My husband would do this too. What I do now is, when it's time for me to get dressed and have a moment in the morning to myself, I walk into the bedroom and say good morning at a normal tone, then turn on a light adjacent to the room. I come back to the bed and say, "Heads up. The kid is by herself downstairs. You might want to get down there before she gets the fridge open by herself, or before she throws a ball at the TV. You get the idea." Then you go to the restroom, shower, use the toilet, play on the phone for 30 to 45 minutes, then get out and get ready for the day. By the time you are out of the shower, he will be downstairs. If not, when you get out of the shower, run to the bed and say, "Oh my God, did you leave the child alone for 30 minutes? Wake up and go now and see what mess they made." For a toddler, I would just flat out lay them in bed on top of him. I guarantee the child only has to make a mess once before he will have to clean it up himself, and then he will make sure he gets out of bed on his own in the morning. Should he be an adult and watch his own children so you don't have to do this? Yes, but if he won't, this will still get him to do what you want. It's less fighting. Update me. Comment 2. So from what's been presented, I don't think it's unreasonable to be upset. The fact you've talked to him multiple times and it's still going on would be a frustrating experience for anyone. I do have to ask an odd question though. Has he been checked out recently? I had an issue where I was constantly tired and sleeping a lot. It turns out I had other symptoms, but I had dismissed those. I was actually sick, and it wasn't until I couldn't get from my apartment to the elevator that I finally got checked out. So maybe there's a health condition going on? Even a change in diet? Is he staying up late? Is he dehydrated overnight so he's lethargic in the morning? Now for the update, my last post was a while ago and things are still just as messed up. So like my husband pulled another late morning on me, not waking up until almost noon. Meanwhile, I was left to manage breakfast and all the chaos with the kids. Seriously, it felt like I was hosting a crazy show in my living room. I had to cancel my work calls because I couldn't find a moment to breathe. The kids were restless, and I felt like a referee juggling 3 tiny tornadoes. I decided to confront him about his schedule again, hoping for a different response this time. But let's be real, I was just hoping. I waited until he finally rolled out of bed, looking like a hot mess with his hair all over the place and still groggy. It's like every time he wakes up, he's surprised to find he's a human and not a zombie. So I asked him if we could talk about our routine and how it was affecting everything. He just brushed it off, saying he was tired and needed rest to focus on work. I mean, seriously? When do I get to focus on anything? His response was, like the cherry on top of this ridiculous sundae. He snapped back, saying I was overreacting and he needed his sleep to function. Oh, so now he's a functioning adult. That's rich. He claimed he was doing his part by working hard, and I wasn't appreciating that. Right, because making money while sleeping in is such a heavy load to carry. He rolled his eyes at me like I was some annoying gnat buzzing around his head, dismissing my concerns as just complaints. I decided to take a break from the conversation and went to the kitchen. I was prepping lunch when I heard him mumbling to someone on the phone in the other room. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I overheard him say something about needing more time to focus and not being able to handle everything. So you can handle everything at work but not at home? Interesting. I waited until he was off the call to ask who he was speaking with. He hesitated for a moment, which was a red flag for me, then mentioned a work colleague he was collaborating with. Right, because we all collaborate at work at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday. A few days later, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. My brother casually mentioned my husband's new project and how he was always busy lately. I asked for details, and my brother said it sounded like my husband was working closely with a woman. So that explained the late mornings and the phone calls. I confronted my husband later that night, asking about his project and the woman involved. He got defensive, saying it was just work and I was being paranoid. He accused me of trying to control him and not trusting him. This guy really knows how to twist the knife. I decided to take a night away to clear my head, so I stayed at my sister's place. She had her own stuff to deal with, and I felt like I was just unloading on her, but I needed that space. I returned home the next day, feeling a bit more grounded. It was like I had a mini vacation from my life, and I kinda needed it. I found my husband had left a note on the kitchen counter saying he was going to work late. More like work on his project, am I right? I noticed his phone was buzzing with messages, and I picked it up without thinking. I saw a message from the same woman mentioned at dinner, asking if he was free later. Instead of confronting him right away, I put the phone down and took a deep breath. I was already at a boiling point, and I didn't want to explode. I told him I needed space to think about our relationship moving forward. He seemed shocked and tried to argue, but I stood my ground. I packed a bag and left, knowing I had to prioritize myself and the kids. I felt like I was finally taking control of my life, It was a small win, but I'll take it. Edit, I moved in with my sister. We are slowly telling the kids about the separation. My husband is trying to win me back. Am I the idiot for confronting my husband about his lies and flirty texts with his elementary school crush? I am a 29-year-old female, married to a 28-year-old male. Sometime last week, I went through my husband's phone since mine had a low battery and needed to be charged. Before I plugged it in, I received a follower request from one of his friends. Curious, I checked his friend's Instagram through his phone since mine was charging. Then I pressed the messages button and noticed a username I am quite familiar with. It was his elementary crush, and they had a mutual understanding back then, like a childhood sweetheart thing. I opened it since she is someone that I have insinuated to my husband, fiancé at that time, that I'm somewhat jealous of. I jokingly told him one time last year when I also opened his Instagram that, "Oh, she appears first in the stories lineup. Does that mean you talk to her, stalk her, or react to her stories every now and then?" I know how the algorithm works, since what I see in my stories lineup are the people I chat with from time to time, my girlfriends. His response back then was not with words, but rather with action, shaking his head as a sign of no. Going back to the present, well, as of last week I saw he was exchanging messages with her, and that following morning, bothered, I was not in the mood the whole day. I thought, if I can make it through tomorrow, I'll just let it go and move on. Yet it took 3 days before I finally felt okay again. On the 4th day, I never thought about it at all, and on the 5th day as well. But on the 6th day, night rather, we went out with the family to attend a reunion, and he got tired, and my phone went dead again. I borrowed his phone once more, and that's when I found out that there was no history left in his Instagram account. He deleted their messages, and I clearly recall I saw they were exchanging chats every now and then. As I got angry, I went to his Messenger account to check whether they also talked outside Instagram, only to find out that he claimed and told that same woman that our vacation trip from last year, for which the tickets were bought by me as an anniversary and birthday gift for him, was actually a business trip. My gift tickets were for a business trip, which it was not at all. That's when I got really, really mad, and aside from telling her that, he also said that I went along with him on that trip. Like, what? I got mad and lashed out at him, and he tried explaining. I brought up to him the term cheating, and he didn't want me to use that word, since he said he knows he did nothing wrong. I got angrier and said some terrible things, and he said he only deleted the messages since I might misunderstand it. I told him it was sort of a confirmation to me that he's a liar, and that I don't think I can still believe anything that he says or does. I slept that night after crying so much and acted like nothing happened the following day since we were with our family the next morning. We are currently on speaking terms since I don't want our families to know or notice that we are not okay, and I think he's trying to make things better by doing or acting on the things I requested or brought up a long time ago. He's trying to arrange tickets for a concert I want to go to and to plan a trip to the same country we went to last year. He's currently sleeping in the bed I'm in, and I can't sleep. That's why I am here typing this. Can I seek advice on how I can move on from this situation? If you have experienced a similar situation, can you tell me how you managed your reaction and emotions? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. And he hasn't explained why he told her the business trip lie and said you followed him? He hasn't explained why he's in contact? I know you're going through a lot emotionally right now. Your mind must be racing, but you're still angry because you know he's lying. He's going to give you a trickle of the truth. You know you just scraped the tip of the iceberg. Comment 2. Consider counseling. If the situation continues to cause significant distress, or if you find it difficult to move past it on your own, seeking couples counseling or individual therapy might be beneficial. A professional can help you work through these emotions and provide strategies for moving forward. Now for the update. It's been 2 days since everything blew up. My husband has been trying to act like everything's fine, but it's obvious things are not okay. We went to a family barbecue at my cousin's place yesterday. I didn't want to talk about our issues, so I just stuck to small talk with the family. At one point, my husband got a phone call and stepped away. I could hear him talking softly and even laughing, which just felt so weird. When he came back, he was super friendly with this distant relative, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. He was also texting a lot throughout the event, which just added to my unease. Later on, I confronted him about the call, and he brushed it off like it was no big deal. Just a work issue, he said. Yeah, right. After that, I went to grab a drink and overheard my in-laws talking about our marriage. They seemed concerned, like they really cared about us. I felt out of place with my husband winning games and celebrating with that distant relative. That's when I decided to step away and take a break inside. While I was in there, I found his phone on the counter. The screen still lit up. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. I checked his recent messages and found stuff not just with the crush, but also with a friend that hinted at cheating. The messages from that friend were flirty and suggestive, and it made my heart drop. Then my husband walked in and caught me red-handed. He freaked out, demanding to know what I was doing. I told him, and it led to another fight. He denied anything inappropriate, saying it was just harmless banter. We went back to the barbecue, but the mood was completely wrecked. A few days later, he suggested a weekend getaway to try to reset things. We booked a cabin in the woods, hoping it would help. On the way there, we didn't talk much. The tension was just hanging over us. When we arrived, he got a text that made him look really uneasy. He said it was from work, but wouldn't show me the message. That night, I couldn't sleep because I heard him whispering on the phone. I confronted him again about being open, but he just got angry. He accused me of invading his privacy and not trusting him. The next morning, breakfast was silent and the atmosphere was super tense. As we were packing to leave, I found a receipt in his bag for a hotel. The date on the receipt matched the one for the vacation he lied about. I confronted him with it and he panicked, trying to come up with excuses. The argument got worse and he finally admitted he had been dishonest. We left the cabin without resolving anything. Mini update. After the cabin incident, things got even worse. My husband confessed he had lied about the vacation, but claimed it was just a work trip with colleagues, nothing more. He also admitted to flirting with the other woman, but swore it never went beyond that. I'm just so confused now. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.